Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman. Our next guest in the studio, Tom McNulty of Lando Anastasi. Great to have you on.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be here.
Good stuff, Tom. Today you wanted to talk about something a little bit different within the patent realm, design patents.
Yeah, exactly. When people think about patents, they usually think about sort of your traditional how something works, how something's made, covering the underlying technology kind of a patent. That's called the utility patent. And those are great to have. I certainly would encourage people who are inventing things to try to get utility patents. But there's a second kind of patent that's kind of the forgotten, the redheaded stepchild in the patent world, I guess, and that's the design patent. Design patents cover the visual appearance of something. So the visual appearance, the ornamental characteristics of whatever product you happen to be selling.
Curious question, Tom, is it somewhat less demanding to achieve a design patent than a utility patent?
That's kind of a yes and no answer. I mean, strictly speaking, design patents go through the same examination process as utility patents, and you have to be novel and non-obvious and things like that. But practically speaking, they tend to be a fair amount cheaper to get because the claim in a design patent is just a drawing of the design. There's not a big written section. There's not a lot of back and forth about the meaning of term X or term Y. So they tend to be a bit cheaper to get. They tend to get through the patent office a half decent amount quicker as well. Again, I think in part because they're underutilized, the office isn't quite so busy.
And just curiously speaking, would it be unusual or inappropriate to get a design patent out of the gate on something, and then is it redundant to get a utility patent after the fact?
I think it's a good idea, depending on what it is you're doing and what you're selling. I think it can be a great idea actually to get a design patent out of the gate. A lot of products are kind of sold somewhat on the basis of how they perform and how they function, but also on the appearance and on the style and characteristics like that. And that's the kind of thing that you can get design protection on quickly, and preclude people from jumping in and making knockoffs. One of the things that is available in trademark law is trade dress protection, which also can cover the appearance and the packaging and things like that. But that you can't get protection until you've obtained acquired distinctiveness is the technical term. Basically, until it's been in the market long enough for people to say that design is yours. Whereas with design patents, it can be effective immediately. Immediately upon issuance. You don't have to be on the market yet. So it offers advantages over, over trade dress protection.
And is that something that's typically, in my mind at least, you'd think of consumer products, but I guess it can be industrial products. Does it have to always be this may be a silly question, but a tangible product to have a design patent? As long as you can put something on paper, I guess. I guess the question is a physical product of some sort.
The design that you're claiming has to be applied on some kind of a physical product, but it can be, you're right, consumer products are one of the big areas. A lot of like the vape pens now is kind of one of the areas of design patent kind of getting a lot of play. Because it's that whole industry is still a little bit the wild west. Athletic shoes, shoe designs are a frequent source of design patent protection, because there's a lot that goes into if Nike makes a shoe with a certain kind of pattern, it's not necessarily something that offers technical advantages that would qualify for a utility patent, but they certainly don't want people knocking off the design. But it can apply to things like graphic user interfaces. So if you've got a particular configuration on an app, say, you can get a design patent on that configuration. Excuse me. And you see them on things like sunglasses, tools, like I say, athletic shoes. You can actually get a design patent on your packaging as well. So that's something that people could look at.
So help us in terms of the breadth of coverage of a design patent and a utility patent, because I think, as you start talking about consumer products and people are entrepreneurs or developing their products, thinking about what that protection might offer, it comes to mind when you mention sneakers or sunglasses, things of that nature. it doesn't take too long to find a knockoff of any of those branded products sold domestically. Whether or not they are produced domestically is a whole other question.
Exactly,
And
as well.
that may be where it's getting under that loophole. But it seems to me that, companies, it's one thing to have the patent. It's a whole other thing to defend that patent and to, issue cease and desist or what have you to prevent others from selling lookalike products.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I mean, one of the advantages with design patent protection is if people are importing, if you get a claim on sunglasses and people are importing infringing sunglasses, you can go to the ITC and try to ban their import. So it gives you, you can kind of cut it off at the source instead of having to go after every little mom and pop store that's selling the sunglasses. So that's one of the advantages that having patent protection in general can get you is sort of availability for ITC kind of claims.
I mean, that is a huge, industry, I guess, across the board in terms of knockoffs. We know a lot of manufacturers in the Far East don't seem to really care as long as somebody's paying them for, their product at the end of the day, what it looks like or what name it has on it. But it seems to me that it's just so rampant, and probably one of the largest areas of infringement is consumer products.
Exactly. One of the things I do kind of want to point out is when you do a design patent, it doesn't have to be to the entirety of the product. It can be to certain characteristics. And probably the most famous one right now, Apple got a design patent on the iPhone that really covered basically the sort of rounded corner rectangle shape. And it didn't claim any of like the buttons and knobs and things like that. It just kind of covered the shape and the existence of the screen. And they actually went after Samsung on that patent. And at one point they had obtained about a $400 million judgment. That was remanded on appeal on the measure of damages issue. And that's still floating around out there. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to resolve itself, but this is also one of the significant advantages of design patents. In utility patents, if you sue somebody, you're entitled to a reasonable royalty, perhaps injunctive relief. With design patents, you can still get the injunctive relief, but you're entitled to the defendant's profits. And the issue in the Apple v. Samsung case is whether the profits should be on the entirety of the phone or just on the case that Samsung was purchasing or making themselves. I'm not really sure which way they did it. So that's sort of an issue that's still floating around, is what constitutes the article of manufacture that you get the profits on. But one of the ways you can use this, there's a Ford case fairly recently. Ford had a design patent on the configuration of the headlights for the F-150, and people are entitled to make replacement headlights, but because of the design patent, they can't make the Ford F-150 design. They have to make it different, and that makes it much more difficult to sell aftermarket parts, because if one of your headlights, if you get in an accident, one of your headlights gets crumpled, you don't want to replace everything to have it match, and you don't want to have a mismatching set. Right. So that was great protection for Ford in that particular case.
So it's really fascinating because on the one hand, it should provide protection, but on the other hand, because it's so rampant, I guess, when you talk about Fortune 1000 companies, they've got the resources. Let's bring it down to the entrepreneur. I've got a design, and then one of the large companies in the world, a multinational, goes out and replicates or knocks off my design, and I imagine that happens as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Yeah.
So looking at the design patent as for an entrepreneur, what are some of the sort of incremental steps that they can take to make that happen? Is it start with the back of a napkin, a sketch on the back of a napkin, or does it need to be really detailed design specifications, or how does that work?
I mean, basically, you sort of have to have some idea of what it is you're going to put on the market so you can protect it. But in general, you can come to a patent practitioner, and we'll have draftsmen that can formalize drawings and draft them up. And the way a design patent works is you draw the thing, and anything that's in solid lines is claimed. Anything that's in dashed lines is not claimed. So there is some sort of know-how, I guess, that goes into what to claim and what to dash out and things like that. And then, and like I say, one of the advantages of the design world, particularly if you're a little guy going up against a big guy, in the utility world, a big player might just go ahead and infringe because what's the worst that can happen? They'll pay a reasonable royalty that they would have been stuck paying anyways. In the design world, if I'm entitled to all your profits, now there's a disincentive for you, and there's probably a more, at a minimum, a more likelihood that the cases will settle more favorably because there's more of a disincentive.
Excellent. And a design patent is issued by the same office, USPTO, and
same office, USPTO. It's like I say, it's easier to obtain and quicker to obtain. It has a 15-year term rather than the 20-year term of a utility patent, but it has the advantage of with a utility patent, every 4 years you have to pay what's called a maintenance fee to keep it alive. And with design patents, you don't. Once you get it, you're done paying fees.
Excellent. Well, I'll give you some good run room in 15 years, hopefully.
Yeah, I would think, yeah. And if you've got a design that lasts more than 15 years and it's still selling, well, then you've done something wonderful.
Good stuff, Tom. Always good guidance, good advice. Tom, if people want to reach you, Tom McNulty, Lando Anastasi, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Probably by email, tmcnulty, MCNULTY, @lalaw.com.
Excellent. This has been another segment of Radio Entrepreneurs. Tom, really appreciate your insights and guidance. And, if people want to start protecting their products, and design patent sounds like a great way to go.
Well,
thank you so much for your time.
Have a good week.
You as well. And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.